Welcome to the Thanksgiving Best List. Here, we'll be listing the best Thanksgiving specials.
It's just not fair. Every Christmas we get pummeled over the head with more animated specials than you could wave a turkey leg at. But Thanksgiving, nothing. Except for Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, which is fine, but what about all the other specials? What if there's some underrated gems here that we haven't been paying attention to? That's what this list is for. I've spent the whole first half of November looking through every animated episode that relates in some way to Thanksgiving, with a few rules. First, preschool programs and adult shows are both disqualified from the list, since Thanksgiving is a holiday about family, and we wanted to find things that targeted the entire family, not just specific members. Also, these episodes don't need to take place on Thanksgiving, so long as they relate to the themes of gratefulness, friendship, and family that Thanksgiving is about. Finally, we couldn't find any footage for any of these episodes, so they won't appear here. And no, we aren't putting a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving on this list, since it would be too obvious.
So how about we get this thing started already? Best number 6?
I'll admit, part of the reason why there aren't that many Thanksgiving specials out there is that Thanksgiving is a holiday that doesn't have that much popular culture surrounding it. Like, with Christmas we can talk about Santa and the fact that malls overhype it to oblivion, or the increasing presence of other holidays, but with Thanksgiving, aside from parades, turkey, pilgrims, and football, there isn't that much to work with that really screams Thanksgiving. Unless, of course, you decide to go the route of making your special as weird and overblown as possible.
We wrecked our turkey on Thanksgiving Day, knocked onto the floor and it burst into flames.
The songs they sung were both terrible, and of course, they had spelled Lady Gaga, Eminem, and oh my gosh, it's Justin Bieber in it. Why else would I get views? Because it has made up pop stars based off actual pop stars that sound nothing like the actual pop stars.
This is definitely a weird one, but it also has some genuinely funny moments. The basic plot is that when Mordecai and Rigby destroy their annoying boss's Thanksgiving dinner, they can't find any more turkeys, so they enter into this song contest thing to try and win a turducken, which is a turkey stuffed inside a duck, stuffed inside a chicken. No, I don't get it either. Also, this evil rich guy wants the turducken as well, and the whole thing piles up into a great big extravaganza of car chases, blimp chases, dance-offs, and death-defying falls. Way to take the idea of Thanksgiving and run with it.
Turducken! The food is good. That's a Phineas and Ferb reference, if you didn't know.
Hey, I said we couldn't include a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. I never said anything about the other Peanuts Thanksgiving special.
Woo! So here we have the Mayflower Voyagers. This is basically the story of the Mayflower, of course. Why else would we call the Mayflower Voyagers? But Charlie Brown and all of his friends are there.
The Peanuts team really did their research with this one. The story they tell here is very thorough, to the point where they even include dates. But it never feels like we're watching a boring documentary, since they make sure to also talk about the emotions that the Pilgrims went through.
At least if we turn and head for home, the winds will be at our back.
What's going to become of us, Linus?
On top of that, they also include some more lighthearted bits of the Peanuts characters, so the whole thing feels really well balanced.
There's also some funny jokes that they use to try and make the scene happier. It kind of works, but at least it's not, like, as Cobalt said, boring and or serious.
So if you're in a Peanutsy mood on Thanksgiving but are sick of seeing a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving over and over, give this one a try.
And now we head on to best number 4.
It's funny. There are a lot of specials that have people feeling down on Christmas, but what about the people who feel down on Thanksgiving? They're a group too, and it's a shame we haven't had more specials about them. That being said, occasionally one comes along that really does this overly ignored audience justice.
What are you talking about, hon? Well, let me tell you, in my house, Thanksgiving is always a disaster.
More Thanksgiving! Less Christmas specials! More Thanksgiving! Less Christmas specials!
Arnold here has apparently never had a real Thanksgiving, since his grandma always thinks it's the 4th of July for some strange reason, and everyone goes along with it to make her happy. And Helga here is always getting overshadowed by her picture-perfect sister on Thanksgiving, while also having to deal with a lazy dad and a mom who doesn't ever quite know what's going on.
Harsh.
The special goes on to tell both of their stories as they both run away from their awful Thanksgivings and try and find the meaning of Thanksgiving on their own.
Helga still looks like a boy. The unibrow makes her look like a boy. It's like Major Monogram all up in the house.
I feel like this special really gets Thanksgiving, probably more than a lot of the others on this list, because, yeah, Thanksgiving is kind of weird sometimes, even if you don't have families like our two protagonists here. The ending is very sweet and really shows that these families are still families despite some of the trouble. That being said, the episode is also kinda depressing. They just spend so much time on how terrible these Thanksgivings are, and it kinda gets sad after a while. But they do a good job contrasting the idealized, commercialized view of Thanksgiving, and yes, that is a thing, with the reality of how families aren't picture perfect.
And also, the Mayflower crashed into the side of a bridge, just as Helga and Arnold were saying how it's a sign of hope. Maybe it's a good vibe or a good sign. Then it crashes. I don't think hazard ahead is a very good sign.
If you've been following our channel, you'll know by now that we are indeed bronies.
Bronies!
And you figure a show about the bonds between friends and family would already have had a Thanksgiving episode. But Equestria, being a fantasy world, doesn't get to have all the same holidays as the real world. That being said, if there was any episode that was made in the spirit of Thanksgiving, it would have to be Family Appreciation Day.
You betcha, Apple Bloom is one humdinger of a Zap Apple Jammer. I am?
Family Appreciation Day is about Apple Bloom and Granny Smith, who go to Family Appreciation Day. It's a conference thing inside of City Bell's classroom, but Apple Bloom doesn't want Granny Smith to come. She's old, and she tells weird stories, and she acts weird and sleeps a lot. She has dentures. But anyway, she tries to prevent her from coming, and eventually she comes anyway. Witchcraft!
We already reviewed this episode for the 4th of July, I guess because whatever Arnold's grandma had rubbed off on us. But now that I look at it, this episode might as well be written on Thanksgiving with how well it fits the holiday, talking about both family and the history of how a place was settled. What's great about this episode is that it really shows how, yeah, sometimes people are a bit embarrassed by their family members, but they usually come through in the end. The highlight of this episode, however, has to be Granny Smith's story about how Equestria was settled. It's a really interesting and well-told story that brings the episode together in the best way possible.
I'm glad Apple Bloom wasn't embarrassed by Granny Smith, as I know parents can be pretty embarrassing. I think that basically sums up the story.
And hey, they were able to pull off a Thanksgiving-type episode without resorting to ponies eating turkey, so that's always a bonus.
Turkey!
Now here's an interesting question you probably never thought about. How do superheroes spend Thanksgiving?
Where is she? No.
Apparently like this, or something. I don't really know.
In this episode, Venom has possessed a once close friend of Peter Parker and is looking to get back inside of Peter to destroy him once and for all. Meanwhile, Peter is dealing with his aunt who has just gotten over a heart attack and can't cook dinner for Thanksgiving. In an attempt to get Spider-Man's attention, Venom ties up one of Peter's best friends, Gwen Stacy, to the top of a gorilla balloon, and everyone seems to think it's a special effect.
Seriously? People these days are so stupid.
While this is largely a Spider-Man story, so you can expect lots of fight scenes, the episode does touch on the importance of family and friends in its own weird superhero-y way. And amazingly enough, this episode's plot uses none of the Thanksgiving cliches, save for a short comment about all the things people are thankful for.
Yep, so basically, this is an adventure story about Thanksgiving. Because, of course, a spectacular Spider-Man could once have a down episode.
Well, I'll give them this. I sure wouldn't have thought of it. So if you're bored by the typical Thanksgiving special and want something a bit more action-oriented, this episode is definitely worth checking out, even if Venom's new host Eddie needs to work on his villain dialogue.
You know who you love the most? Bro.
I'm sorry, no menacing supervillain should ever use the word bro in a sentence.
I know, bro. Totally, bro. For sure, bro. Never again, bro. Bro, 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 bro.
For our number one, we decided to pick out the episode that showcased the bonds between people the best. It was not an easy choice, but ultimately, after thinking it through, we chose to go with a somewhat unusual entry from the creative minds behind Adventure Time.
So thank you. It's a small short episode that was about a snow golem and a fire puppy, and they become best friends. I personally thought it was adorable. That little fire puppy is so cute.
These two have tons of personality, and it's really nice to see their unlikely friendship grow and build. This episode definitely took some inspiration from Pixar shorts, in that, aside from one line at the end, these two characters don't speak. But the short still has a unique atmosphere to it. The animation and music really give this its own personality, and the bond that these two form with each other is almost like a family.
They technically did speak, but in their own golem and fire puppy languages. I still thought the whole entire episode was really adorable and pretty much perfect, and I did really enjoy watching it.
Also, because this is an Adventure Time episode, we occasionally cut to some brief skits of Finn and Jake trying to break through the invincible armor of the Ice King. It doesn't really have much to do with anything, and kind of breaks the episode up, but the two stories tie together at the end in a way that's both really touching and kind of weird.
True, so that was the best list of Thanksgiving. We hope you enjoyed this special presentation, and we will see you in the next video. Adios!
And have a very happy Thanksgiving!
Get a piece of turkey!
Are you going on Thanksgiving Day to those family celebrations? Passing on knowledge down through the years at the gathering of generations.
Happy Thanksgiving, bro.